If you are pregnant or you've recently had a baby, this podcast is for you. I am your host, Kath Bequee, a physiotherapist working in women's health and mum of three. Inside my online program, Fitness Mama, I just love helping support women to care for their bodies during pregnancy, prepare their bodies for birth, and support their after-birth recovery, helping them feel confident and strong inside out during this important stage of their lives. In this podcast, join me each week as we dive into all things pregnancy care, childbirth and postnatal recovery, helping you through every step of the journey. It is absolutely possible to feel amazing and confident in our bodies during this motherhood journey, and I want that for you. Come and say hi to me on Instagram at FitnessMama, and let's dive into today's episode. Welcome back to another episode of the Fitness Mama podcast. So this is season 2. I just had a few weeks off where I went away with my husband, which we haven't done. We went overseas with no children. So we haven't done that since all my 3 kids have been born. So it was amazing to be able to spend just a week with my husband and actually have a decent conversation for the first time in what feels like a decade. So hence the pause. I am so excited to be back for season 2 of the Fitness Mama podcast. And this time round, this season, we're going to be doing things a little bit differently. So every month there is going to be a new theme. And I'm going to get guest speakers to come and talk about the particular theme. And yeah, it's going to be super exciting. And I think a little bit more structured and easier to follow as a listener, I'm hoping. So this month's theme, so November, is all about returning to running postpartum. So returning to exercise after having a baby. So you might not want to necessarily get back into running, but I'm just using the term running loosely in terms of any higher impact exercise or any exercise that's that level up from walking. So whether or not it's a gym, a pump class, CrossFit, running, all those sorts of things. So super exciting. Stay tuned for the month ahead. Each and every topic is going to dive into a different aspect of returning to running. So I'm really excited. Before I do dive into today's episode, which is how long after giving birth can I run? Like, this question is really common. Every time I do a Q&A inside the Instagram Fitness Mama, I often put the question box up, and this pretty much always gets asked. So how long after giving birth can I return to running? And that's the question I'm answering today. Before I do dive into this episode, I'd just love to let you all know about a new free checklist that I've got available to you all. So you can download this free return to running checklist, gain clarity with this super quick and simple return to running checklist to make sure that you are on track to best support your body in returning to running after having a baby. So as a women's health physio, this checklist encompasses everything I feel is so important to consider during this important postpartum period. So download this free return to running checklist at fitnessmama.com/running checklist, and the link is also in the show notes. All right, let's dive into this episode. So how long after giving birth can I return to running? I wish there was a simple black and white answer. So I'm going to give you the textbook answer, but I'm also going to talk through the variables and the things for you to consider, because each and every person is different. And I think it's really important to take some of these factors into consideration when you're thinking about yourself and your body and your birth experience and whether or not you personally are ready to return to running. So I'm going to I've jotted down a few points here in terms of factors to consider for where you're at. So I'm assuming you've had your baby perhaps, and you're thinking, I might be ready to get back into running. So let's have think of a few of these things. So first of all, what was your fitness like pre-pregnancy or pre-birth? Were you running before you gave birth? And the reason this question is important is because if you maintained a great pregnancy fitness and you've been running relatively close to pregnancy or giving birth, your baseline is going to be quite different to someone who had morning sickness, perhaps had pelvic girdle pain, and perhaps wasn't able to do much exercise at all during pregnancy. So just have a think, in the last 6 to 9 to 12 months, where has your fitness been? Because this will help to gauge how quickly you can or how much time you might need before you return to running. Okay, the second factor to consider is the type of childbirth that you had. So if you had a vaginal birth, was there any instrumental delivery? Were there forceps, stitches? Did you have a difficult labour? All of these might affect recovery. And the third thing to consider is your recovery from birth. So one person who's had birth might recover quite differently from another person who's had birth, and even though they had a relatively similar birth experience. So recovery from birth can be quite individual. Did you feel achy and sore? Or have you been having recurrent bouts of mastitis and you've been quite unwell? So how is your body feeling at the moment? How's your sleep deprivation? How's your energy levels? Perhaps you're 6 weeks after birth and you've hardly had the chance to step outside the house to go for a walk. Whereas another person 6 weeks after birth might have been doing some consistent walking over the last few weeks. And on that note, I have got a whole episode on recovery in those first 6 weeks, so do check those previous podcast episodes. But walking in those first 6 weeks is an interesting one. Yes, walking is great for fitness, great for exercise, great for so many reasons. It gets us out the house. It's important for our mood and our confidence. But in those first 6 weeks, I really want you to build up your walking slowly. So I have a general rule of thumb, build up 5 minutes extra each week. So the first week, you might just be doing 5-minute bursts. So walking around the hospital ward, walking around the home, perhaps walking around the block. In the second week, you might be doing 10-minute bursts. And when I say bursts, I mean you might do 10 minutes in the morning, 10 minutes at lunch, 10 minutes in the afternoon. See how your body's feeling. Third week might be 15 minutes, fourth week 20 minutes, fifth week 25 minutes, and 6 weeks, that's 30 minutes of walking. So you've built up slowly and gradually rather than at week 2 postpartum, you set out for an hour and a half walk. So just have a think about how that walking's going in those first 6 weeks. And I do just quickly want to discuss that recovery process. If we're thinking about childbirth, and I'm talking more about a vaginal birth here, if we think about our pelvic floor muscles during the childbirth process, it's like our pelvic floor muscles are being stretched like an elastic band. And those first few weeks after having baby, I love this analogy because we want that natural recoil to occur as much as possible. So we don't want that elastic band to stay on stretch. We want to encourage and support as much natural recoil because it's not all about how strong your muscles are, because it's not just the muscles that have been affected. It's the ligaments and the fascia and the soft connective tissue. And that sometimes just needs rest and support and time to heal rather than strength. So this is where I really do believe in the gentle, slowly building up in the walking levels, the walking distance. Those first 6 weeks, it's focusing on your pelvic floor, lots of horizontal rest. So lying down, because that helps to take gravity, the effect of gravity away from your pelvic floor. But as I said, check out some previous episodes because I've actually got quite a few on helping to boost your recovery in those first 6-week period. Okay, so let's say you're 6 weeks and you've been building up your walking slowly over those first 6 weeks. You've then had your medical check. You've got that medical tick of approval to return to exercise. You're feeling good. Then you might be feeling like you're ready to slowly boost your exercise up to the next level. So perhaps that might include longer walks. Perhaps you might start to do some strength work. You might return to running. You might return to Pilates or doing those exercises to help build upon your core muscles. So if we do that for 6 weeks, so that's from 6 weeks to 12 weeks postpartum, bang, you're already at 12 weeks. So at 12 weeks after giving birth, I know it might feel like a long time, but really it's not a long time to step through all those processes. So what I've just described is sort of the textbook scenario. But the real life scenario, perhaps you've got a colicky baby, you're finding it difficult to leave the house, let alone exercise. You might be up all night exhausted. You get my drift. So one woman at 12 weeks can look so different to another woman at 12 weeks. And that's why I really don't like to put a time frame on this. But let's say textbook answer, when can I return to running after having a baby? I would say 12 weeks, given that you've been building up your walking slowly, you've had a pelvic floor assessment, you've got that medical tick of approval, and you've built upon your strength, your core, and all those important foundation exercises. So that might be, if you might be at 12 weeks and you're just coming up for some fresh air and you're just now beginning to get on top of your sleep and be feeling human again. So you might actually need, from 12 weeks, even though you're 12 weeks, you might actually need another 6 weeks ahead of you to slowly build up your strength before you start your return to running program. I hope that makes sense. So let's say you're at 12 weeks, the textbook answer, and you've built up you're walking slowly, you've built up your strength, you've got those foundations in place. Then you might be ready to return to running and start that program of yours. But you're not going to go bang into a 5-kilometre run. You really want to build up slowly. So, ladies, in December, inside our program Fitness Mama, our return to running program is kicking off. So if you have felt like you've listened to this podcast and you've thought, okay, I'm at 12 weeks or about 12 weeks. I feel like I have been walking and I've built up some strength and I'm ready to take it to that next level. This return to running program could be just what you need. And I'm offering it to you for free for a 3-week trial. And I don't often offer these 3-week trials. Usually it's a 7-day trial. So if you think you'd like to join us for free to help to kickstart your running and your return to running program, then head to fitnessmama.com/running, and the direct link is also in the show notes. So hopefully that's been helpful. I'm going to just quickly summarize what I've said. Before return to running, I want you to consider how things have been before you were pregnant, how things were during your pregnancy, how are things with the birth, how are things with the recovery, and how are you feeling now? You want to get that medical tick of approval, gold standard as pelvic floor assessment. And we really want to work on the pelvic floor strength. And this is something definitely offer inside Fitness Mama. And this return to running program, I've got the pelvic floor at the front of mind. So ladies, so hopefully that's given you a little bit more of an idea about how long you need to leave until you can perhaps get back into running after giving birth. And remember, if there's any questions or concerns, please do consult your healthcare provider for that specific support, assessment, diagnosis, and treatment plan. That's it, ladies. Don't forget there's a free checklist, return to running checklist, and there's also access to a few free weeks to the return to running program that's happening inside our Fitness Mama program. So I'll look forward to hearing how you're going with your return to running program. Feel free to send me an Instagram message at Fitness Mama. That's it, ladies. Have a fabulous day, and we'll see you next week for another episode of the Fitness Mama podcast. Thanks for listening to the Fitness Mama podcast, brought to you by the Fitness Mama freebies found at www.fitnessmama.com/free. So please take a few seconds to leave a review, subscribe so you don't miss an episode, and be sure to take a screenshot of this podcast, upload it to your social media, and tag me at Fitness Mama so I can give you a shout out too. Until next time, remember, an active pregnancy, confident childbirth, and strong postnatal recovery is something that you deserve. Remember our disclaimer: materials and contents in this podcast are intended as general information only and shouldn't substitute any medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. I'll see you soon.